Now, live from the capital city, Georgetown. Political, legislative, economics, and current affairs. The People's National Congress Reform, PNCR, presents Nation Watch.
Good morning, ladies and gentlemen of the media. Welcome to our press conference for today, Friday, the 16th day of January 2015. Today, a Partnership for National Unity is focusing on the fact that not only Guyanese have come together to criticize the lack of democracy in the leadership of President Donald Ramattar, but also the international community. First off, I apologize for the absence of the leader of the opposition. He is currently on assignment in the Rupununi area. On the panel with me, however, is APNU Member of Parliament and one of our youth leaders, Mr. James Anthony Bond, who's also an attorney at law. And attorney at law, Mr. Basil Williams, who's also the chairman of the People's National Congress Reform, APNU Member of Parliament, and of course, Deputy Speaker of the National Assembly, among other things. The statement will be read by Mr. Williams.
Our press statement by a Partnership for National Unity, Friday 16th of January 2015. Caption: International community criticizes Donald Ramattar presidency for lack of democracy. A Partnership for National Unity, APNU, supports international criticism of the People's Progressive Party civic administration over its damage to parliamentary and local democracy in Guyana. President Donald Ramattar has failed to conduct local government elections and failed to recall the National Assembly after he prorogued Parliament on the 10th of November 2014. A Partnership for National Unity notes the following. 9th of January 2013. The ambassadors and high commissioners of the USA, UK, Canada, and the European Union stated jointly, and I quote, "Given the important and pressing need for effective local governance, we believe that 2013 should be a watershed moment for the people of Guyana, the year they can once again democratically elect their local government. The institutions and practice of local governance have withered on the vine." End of quote. On 6th of March 2014, several foreign missions and local non-governmental organizations issued a joint statement expressing their collective hope that local government elections would be held by the 1st of August 2014. That statement was signed by the British High Commission, the High Commission of Canada, Embassy of the United States of America, Berbice Chamber of Commerce, Consultative Association of Guyanese Industry, Georgetown Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Guyana Association of Women Lawyers, Guyana Bar Association, Guyana Manufacturing and Service Association, Guyana Trades Unions Congress, Justice Institute, Private Sector Commission, and Transparency Institute, Guyana, Inc. On the 11th of November 2014, the Secretary General of the Organization of American States, the OAS, Jose Miguel Insulza, took note of Proclamation No. 1 of 2014, dated November 10, 2014, in which President Donald Ramattar prorogued the 10th Parliament of Guyana with immediate effect for a maximum period of 6 months. Insulza stated, and I quote, "In a democracy, an efficient functioning of the Parliament allows for checks and balances and for the voice of the people to be heard." End of quote. He expressed the hope that, and I quote, "parliamentary debate could be resumed in the 10th Parliament in the shortest possible period of time." End of quote. The 8th of January 2015, the United Kingdom's Foreign Office Minister Tobias Ellwood stated, and I quote, "The United Kingdom government views with concern the continued prorogation of Parliament by His Excellency President Ramattar and calls for its earliest possible resumption. Parliament is required by Guyana's Constitution and the Commonwealth Charter requires the necessary checks and balances and enables citizens' voices to be heard. The suspension of Parliament therefore means that an essential element of a functioning democracy has been put on hold. I quote, "We also continue to have concerns that there have been no local elections for over 20 years, which is also contrary to the democratic principles of the Commonwealth Charter and the Guyana's own constitution. The United Kingdom calls on all stakeholders to seek solutions to the political and socio-economic challenges facing Guyana so that the country can develop in a fair, democratic, and equitable way." End of quote. 12th of January 2015. The United Kingdom High Commissioner to Guyana, Andrew Ayer, warned that Guyana was on, and I quote, "a dangerous path," end of quote, and that the country could be referred to a Commonwealth body which deals with serious violators of democracy principles. He warned also that the United Kingdom's assistance to Guyana could be affected if the suspension of Parliament by President Donald Ramatar is not lifted. He stated, and I quote, "Guyana is moving into a category of concern for the Commonwealth," end of quote. President Donald Ramatar will be remembered forever as the president who inflicted the greatest damage on parliamentary and local democracy. The president has violated the spirit of the Constitution of the Cooperative Republic of Guyana, which states, and I quote, "Local government is a vital aspect of democracy and shall be organized so as to involve as many people as possible in the task of managing and developing the communities in which they live," end of quote. The president, by his 10th of November 2014 prorogation of Parliament, effectively prevented the functioning of the National Assembly, which has not met for over 6 months. This ends the reading of our press statement. If I could add that this is not an isolated matter, and members of the media would remember that from the advent of this 10th Parliament, the President and the government have shown great antipathy to it, and they have refused to recognize the independence of the Parliament and the authority of the Parliament. In fact, in 2012 alone, every decision made in the National Assembly that they didn't like, they went to the courts to challenge the decisions of the Parliament of Guyana. You would recall action number 19 of 2012, where they went to challenge the National Assembly's right to compose and determine the composition of its parliamentary committees. Then you had action number 69, CM of 2012. And this was a challenge to the right of the leader of the opposition to bring a motion in the National Assembly of no confidence against Minister Roy. You would recall that the Attorney General, after recognizing that this action couldn't go further because he couldn't prevent a member of Parliament from bringing a motion in the National Assembly, which is a workplace of a member of Parliament. And so he hastily went and he withdrew and discontinued this action, if you would recall that. And then he filed action number 94 CM of 2012, where the Parliament had made a decision, where a decision was made by the Speaker, endorsed by the Parliament, that Minister Rohi, because of the no confidence motion that was resolved against him successfully, ought not, since he did not resign, or the President did not remove him from the Parliament, should not speak in the Parliament. And he went to court on that again. And then when the Parliament protected the people's coffers by not allowing certain items of expenditure in the budget, by reducing and cutting them, as you recall, they went to court again, not accepting that Parliament has a right to make such a determination. That matter, of course, is still pending. And in 2014, we disapproved, in accordance with the Chief Justice's decision, around $37 billion worth of programs that the Parliament considered was injurious to the interests of the Guyanese people. And again, in the case that has been filed to stop them from pillaging the people's coffers, the Attorney General at the last sitting a couple of days ago confirmed that the government of Guyana has in fact spent the entire $37 billion that was disapproved by the National Assembly. So you don't want to have any further evidence about this government's attitude and the president's attitude to parliamentary democracy in Guyana. And you must remember Article 1 of our Constitution and Article 9 conjointly speaks to the separation of powers. The Constitution being supreme established three arms of the state: Parliament, the government, executive, and the judiciary. And therefore, it means that no one should trample on the rights of the other arm. And what we have in here is the attempt to continue the dominance of this government, which has practiced a parliamentary dictatorship since 1992, and then recognized that from 2011 that changed. And so they still wish to continue that. So what is happening now with the prorogation of the Parliament, which we consider to be unlawful, because in the architecture of a constitution, you don't just pull out one article and read it in isolation. You have to read it conjointly with other provisions. Because this prorogation conflicted with Article 13, which speaks to an inclusionary democracy. But we don't wish to go into more of that, but we just wish to show you that this whole question of prorogation on the 10th of November 2010 and the failure to hold local elections, notwithstanding that the president's party members in Parliament unanimously passed those bills, you must tell us, when the bills went to him, how he could have refused to assent to those bills. So the failure to assent to bills is another aspect where the president has shown disrespect to the Constitution and to parliamentary democracy. I wish I could go on like this forever, but I wish to stop now.
Thank you, MP Williams. I'll now invite a brief additional statement from MP Bond.
I believe that the precedent set by this administration in this 10th Parliament, I think the injury that would have been done, we cannot allow it to go unchecked. We cannot allow it to go untreated. Democracy as we know it is a right of every single Guyanese, and a right which we have fought for and struggled for. To have that right trampled upon in the manner in which it is now, and then to be offered a diet of excuses, a diet of abuses, I think a strong message needs now be sent to the administration. The president has made some very empty and shallow statements and comments about our democracy, in telling us that he wants to wait and delay because of Christmas, because he wanted to have talks with the leader, that he is taking it upon himself to breach our rights. I think we should let the president know and let the administration know that the Guyanese people are through and have had enough. I believe there can be no greater sending of a message than to force the president's hand to call elections now. I think they're their weakest, and I think this is the only treatment and the only remedy to the abuses and the injury that have been caused by the spate of incidences that were listed by chairman of the party, Mr. Williams. Only elections right now could solve this problem. And we believe that the administration knows that their end is nigh, and they're doing everything within their powers to prolong their inevitable end. And I would like to take this opportunity to call out the administration, to call the People's Progressive Party Civic, and have them call the elections in the 3 months or within these few months that we're expecting them to call it. We're expecting a date early January, and I believe it's early January now. So I think it's time. Thank you.
Gordon Mosley, News Source. Mr. Williams, could you say now that the British government and this morning, the Stabrook News, the U.S. government, now that they're both calling for elections and an election date to be announced soon, do you plan, or does the party plan to meet with them again on some more of your concerns? Because you would have met with them sometime last year.
You mean the foreign diplomats?
Yeah.
Well, let's say that this is not an isolated incident. The ambassadors and high commissioners for the ABCE countries have shown a consistency. You already recall from the time we went into the Special Select Committee to look at the 4 local government bills. They came out, that was the first time, they came out in support of the process, and they came out calling, hoping that that process eventuated into the whole of local government elections. When the government, as usual, dance from the year to the next year, they also call on the government to hold local government elections. Now, general and regional elections have been in the air, and the prorogation to avoid a no confidence motion, which would have eventuated into national elections and regional elections. Again, they have come out, and they are calling on the government to do the right thing, hold elections. But the prorogation of parliament is something that is unprecedented in this region. And the Commonwealth Charter is very clear that we must uphold the principles of democracy, and they outline the core principles of democracy. And vital to that is Parliament. Parliament, among the things that come out from Parliament, the various arms of the parliamentary democracy in the Commonwealth, which has over 100 or something, well over 100, I think 50 or something members. And you recall that they had sanctioned Zimbabwe, and you recall they had sanctioned Fiji. And, you know, I don't know why the government feels that if they don't adhere to the Commonwealth Charter, that they won't face sanctions also, suspension and the like. And it doesn't matter if the Commonwealth Secretary General is saying right now there's no formal application for that purpose within the Commonwealth. It doesn't mean that what the High Commission said is not so. That, in other words, countries within the Commonwealth are asking questions. They are concerned that the Parliament of Ghana could be suspended, and then activities that involving hundreds of millions of dollars are being conducted and spent by the government without scrutiny. And that's really the overriding factor in a country with a constitution that speaks to the separation of powers and the different roles of the arms. How could the executive arm shut down the parliament, which has to give oversight and scrutiny to such financial expenditure of the people's money? And so the world sees it not as proper constitutional action, as they're trying to suggest, where they isolate Article 71 and say they could prorogue, but really as a device to hide their activities from the eyes of the parliamentarians which have to provide the scrutiny.
And sir, what is the party's view of the response from the government with regards to the statements made by the British High Commission, the government calling him a pariah and saying they can't wait to see him leave? What is the party's view of that statement coming from a government?
But is that strange or unusual for the government? When the world bodies, for example, with human trafficking, when the US report came out on human trafficking, what was the response of the government? Not to come out in the same manner, in a hostile manner, a disrespectful manner. When Transparency International gives its review, isn't it the same approach? The American ambassador who just left here, when he gave his opinion on it, what was the response? a feral blast. So this is not unusual. What they try to do is to attack. Whenever these things come, they try to go on, in terms of defense, to go on the offensive. But no one is fooled by it. And I don't know why they want to adopt such an approach when they accept millions, hundreds of millions from these countries. And it's the people's taxpayers' money. And the people of the United Kingdom, he's suggesting, would not approve of monies being poured into a country like this, where they're not practicing democracy. And then you actually shut down the citadel of democracy in an arbitrary, whimsical, and capricious manner.
Yes, Mr. Nagamoto described the bypass road as a fly-by-night project. What is Apnu's position in this regard to the project, and do you support the comments of Mr. Nagamoto?
Well, I'm not sure what motivated Mr. Nagamoto to say that. I'm not aware of the considerations that might have caused him to make such a statement. What I do know is that that road has been in that condition for too long. It has been like that for too long. No one could say that the road couldn't serve a useful purpose. But the fact of the matter is it's costing the taxpayers so much that we don't even know what the state of play is, when it's going to be completed. But in terms of it being fly-by-night, it has been there for several years. I don't know, James, if you have any additional information that might have caused Mr. Nagamoto to say that. But we also need another road, a bypass road, not only to help with the traffic, perhaps when you're going up the bank, another road, some way that has been proposed that would have gone through the where the sugar fields are, and come down some way down to link up with the Mandela Avenue road going up to the East Coast. We need roads. There are too many vehicles on the roads, and we haven't increased the mileage of the roads for years. So we need roads. But we need roads to be done in a proper manner, and there must be transparency in relation to the contracts, and there must be accountability for the spending on these roads.
So you're saying you're not in support of Mr. Nagamoto?
I'm not saying that.
What are you saying?
I don't know what the considerations cause him to say this fly-by-night. I don't know what he means by fly-by-night either. But I know that he expressed concerns, and we have similar concerns that the roads ought to have been finished years ago. And we don't know about the accountability aspect of the road and the transparency of the contracts that attend those roads.
Chevy?
Ms. Williams, Mr. Harman as well as Dr. Luncheon has announced that the COI into the death of Walter Rodney is slated to begin shortly. Can you say if the PNC is planning to participate?
Actually, when I received the email that they want to resume, I wrote them indicating, querying whether it was wise to bring it at this time, where Parliament has been prorogued, general and regional elections are in the air, and political parties are campaigning. I really haven't received a formal response from Mr. Denbo, but I had sent that by email to him. I noted that the lawyer for the TUC had responded to and referred to what I had said, and he in fact wouldn't be able to make it for the session. They were proposing that Lincoln Lewis would now attend. This session is, the first one is 26th to the 31st, and they proposed to have another session from the 8th of February, which would be the 8th session, and they want Lincoln Lewis there. He said he really couldn't come for that because this one came so, out the blue with the elections in the air. And we reiterate in the APNE that it's really unnecessary to have this type of exercise that is being conducted in this Commission of Inquiry at a time like now.
But if it does commence on the 26th, will the PNC participate?
Well, but don't forget our participation is limited to having lawyers in there to do cross-examination and to challenge some of those statements.
Yes, that is the participation I'm referring to. Will we see that participation?
But my recollection is that when we ended the last time, I had Dr. Gopal was on a cross-examination, so I will have to continue if I decided that I needed more from him. But I'm looking forward. I don't know if you're aware that they've sent 3 witnesses, the names of 3 witnesses, The second one on the list is Mr. Clement Rohi. And obviously, I'm looking forward with alacrity to hear what he has to say.
If I can follow up quickly, will we also see the PNC's participation in the sessions after the one slated for January?
I don't know if elections are afoot, but let me say now that the commissioners had expressed some reservations to actually be conducting an inquiry of this nature in an atmosphere where they are where elections are afoot and parties are on the hustings. They did express such reservations.
Okay, so barring any anomalies, PNC will be participating in the upcoming inquiries.
Well, we will be doing what we've been doing usually. I can't tell you that I will be sitting there 24/7. I will have to I'll try and see how I could, as I did in the last session, do the adjustment. But certainly, I would want to be there to cross-examine somebody like Mr. Roy.
Eva Wharton, Capital News. Mr. Williams, I'm not sure, I don't know if you have knowledge of the AFC's protest, but they're currently calling for the revocation of government visas, ministers' visas, in light of the current problems that government has with the ABC countries. They are also saying that those visas should be revoked until elections are held locally. Is this a call that the APNU supports?
Well, I'm now learning about that for the first time. I must apologize. I haven't heard of it before.
Mr. Williams, could you say what is the state of affairs with regards to the meeting the leader of the PNC is supposed to have with members of the Linden community, members of the party in Linden? It's supposed to be sometime this week coming. Could you say what's going on with that?
Well, I think the leader has indicated that he has no difficulty meeting with party groups in Linden, and he had received an invitation from a party group, and he would be attending. It depends on his scheduling. Right now he's in the Rupununi, so he'll be there for a couple of days when he gets back. But there's no, we see a whole set of sensational headlines about Linden, and as far as I know, we have Mr. Granger and his team. We've always been ready, willing, and able to engage with our constituents in Linden. As you know, you can't sweep it. One cannot sweep it under the carpet that there are some issues there, but they're not unresolvable. And I can assure you that we will make all attempts to resolve those differences in a major constituency of ours.
As chairman of the party, will you be accompanying him?
Well, I don't know. I have accompanied him on a lot of, if not all of the occasions when we went up there for engagements. And it just depends on our schedule. The chairman of the party is a very busy person.
Jomo, just one minute.
Jomo Po again. Mr. Williams, AFC consultant Mr. Dahil Samad has said the party has no interest in coalescing with the APNU. In fact, he's saying that it's just a front. How does the APNU feel about these proposed talks with the AFC?
Well, I don't know if he's on the executive of the AFC.
Actually, yes.
Is he?
Yes.
And I don't know if he was speaking for the executive for the AFC or just his own opinion. But that's nothing new. We've been hearing things like that over the years. It's only latterly that we've heard, I think, coming out of the AFC's Congress, it's the first time we heard that the AFC really prepared to engage with others, including us in the APNU. And as you know, Mr. Harman and the General Secretary of AFC have been engaged in preliminary aspects of that type of talk. But I don't know about Mr. Samad's position. We can't say, whether it's a policy statement he's making or not. Well, I don't know if the executive of the AFC has addressed that issue, that statement that he made. But it's not something that we haven't heard before.
Cassia.
Information is surfacing that the Apnu and AFC are having secret talks about the coalition. However, broader members are not being involved in the discussion. Could you say if this is so and why?
Well, let me say this. I don't know when the PPP has talks with any other person, they do it in the papers or they do it on the television, etc. I'm not sure what they mean by secret talks. But it would appear to me that if you are going to deal with issues of coalition and how you're going to approach a national election, where you have a government that has been in there from 1992 and has been operating like a rogue government, dictatorially and in every way, why we would want to discuss our plans so that they could be following our plans blow by blow, day by day, word by word. It's senseless. It doesn't make sense to us. And that's why they are putting out that kind of headlines out there, because they want to know. They are mortally afraid about these elections. That's why they're not calling elections. The president and PPP have been hurt by proroguing this parliament. They want a way to come out from it. But when they wait to come, when they come out, they are faced and confronted with the statements that the first business in parliament is the no confidence motion. And so they know that's elections. And so they are mortally afraid of that. So why would we hold open talks about engaging with each other in a contest with the PPP? So I don't know about secret, but we having talks, and you know, people have talks.
So are the wider board members being involved in the talks?
Well, I'm not sure if you mean with board members. I know about the talks. I know the officers and the members of the Central Executive of the People's National Congress know about the talks. I know the members of the Shadow Cabinet know about the talks. I don't know if you mean that the rank and file must be in the same room with the way the talks are going on. I'm not sure what you mean by that. But people know about the talks. And Mr. Ahmed cannot go and talk on his own. He has to have direction from us. And he has to get direction from members of the Shadow Cabinet. So let's disabuse your mind of that, if that's what you're hinting at.
Cordell.
Cordell Jones, MTV News Update. Sir, could we have a comment on Mr. Brassington's reason for not allowing Mr. Badal to invest in the Marriott?
I don't know how I could address that. I must tell you I was shocked when Mr. Badal said he was interested in purchasing it. The point is, they're saying that he's not serious. The point of fact is we don't know who the investors are, who are the people that put up the money. And that's a problem that we've had that has characterized the relationship of this government with the 10th Parliament. The lack of transparency. Up to now, they still not telling us, look where that building has gone. So whose money is spending? So that's the whole issue with this government, the lack of transparency and accountability. And they're spending our money, the taxpayers' money, and you know the issue there is that they have a whole set of money that they haven't put into the consolidated account. There's no wonder why the government is afraid to hold elections.
Can you say whether APNU support groups are fully mobilized for elections campaigning?
Our support groups?
Yes. Smaller groups around the country.
Well, APNU is already engaged with campaigning for elections. We were engaged since last year in campaigning for local government elections. And the national elections, really, there's a smooth transition for campaigning to national elections. Because you would recall by the structure and nature of local government, the new local government electoral system, more people are engaged in the process. You know, there's provision for constituency elections in a unit, for example, an NDC, and for PR. So what would obtain in a situation like that, since every candidate has to get people to recommend him, and also the list must have people to recommend them, and they can't be recommending more than one candidate, it really means that an entire, several villages, the population and an NDC, most of that population would have to be engaged for the purposes of local government elections. And that's what has been happening. And so it's a benefit for us, because having engaged and having started over a year ago on our local government campaign, we have a whole set of people who would have been engaged for that purpose. So when national election comes up, which is basically a PR elections, we have more workers. So we engaged. We were ready for snap election. Remember, we were threatened with one? We were ready since then.
Just a clarification, Mr. Roy. Did the Rodney commissioners explain why they had reservations about continuing their work while the country was in this mode?
But let me say, the chairman of the commission, you know, was also a politician, a minister of government and all that. And I think he thought that, you know, lacked propriety really to be here at this time, at a time when a country is in the course of contesting elections to determine who would be the government. I think he had that kind of sensitivity. I think all of them had indicated that to us, that they didn't think it was, the atmosphere would be appropriate for that. That was the type of intimations that they had given to us.
Sorry, so you say you think. Did they indicate this, or are you making an assumption?
Well, they indicate that to me. I received that indication from them. I try to remember whether it's official or unofficial. But they would have said that to me while they were seated at the table. I don't know whether it's during the session or after the session. But they did express a reservation.
Bravin, then Andrew.
Do you believe that the COI, by the way, should be held in that atmosphere?
Ravin Singh, Guyana Chronicle. Mr. Bond, you would have said earlier that strong messages need to be sent to the president for the hosting of general and regional elections. Could you say what some of these strong messages would be?
I think the press statement would have indicated strong messages coming from the ambassadors or high commissioners of the US and UK. Strong messages could be sent in the terms of mass mobilizations. I think, and to be frank, the APNU have done a fantastic job in terms of mobilizing during the time when we were calling for local government elections. But I believe the buy-in time now is for the citizenry. APNU has always stood as the vanguard for those rights. And I think young people who are going to be first-time voters, young people who have a greater stake in this country, should rally hard behind the APNU in organizing ourselves into mass demonstrations against this government to press the case for early elections. I think 2011 would have taught us the euphoria and excitement that comes along with exercising your franchise. And I think that bug needs to bite the young people. I think that is the strongest message we could send to this administration and getting together our numbers, huge numbers. We will be campaigning in the next coming months, next coming days, and over the next over ensuing months. And I think this is a call to persons near and far in all 10 regions. I'm looking at the slapping of the teacher John Adams, a young man who expressed a view. If we are not seeing the signs to send strong message, they're pushing back against the populace and the citizenry. The administration is pushing back against us. And it is time we start to do some pushing.
Mr. Bond, you just said that the young people should rally along with the APNU's drive to push for general elections. If I'm to ask, has APNU, particularly the youth of the APNU, been reaching out to youths visibly and tangibly to first inform them of why they should push for general elections, the specific provisions, because we have a whole lot of vague sayings about this is why it's wrong or this is why it shouldn't be done. But has APNU done enough to inform the people as to why they should, young people in particular, as to why they should, as well, do what you said?
To answer your question pretty as fairly as possible, I possibly could. The young people of APNU have, I know you would have been aware that we normally have meetings every Friday, almost every Friday at Starbucks Square. We do press releases and press conferences. The information is out there. Our position and our stance is out there. Whether we're doing enough or whether we're using the ways and means and hows to tap into the young population and to get their pulse, enough is relative.
Andrew Biggs, Nightly News. Anybody on the panel can answer this question. Are you at all surprised at the response coming from the private sector recently about, you know, they don't like elections, they're waiting for the parties to come together and work their matters out and, you know, get this whole thing over because they don't like elections, and they're calling on the opposition to work together and the government to work together to get elections on its way before, you know, because they're going out of business. They're not going to get much business in and out of elections. So they're waiting for the date to be called. They suddenly changed their tune, so to speak. Your comment?
I think they're dancing and playing to the same tune. Look, the private sector has never shown any courage to dissent from the views of the government and the actions of this government. And if you notice in that statement that they made, it's suddenly they're talking about all, make a statement that include all sides should come together. That's what they do. But they have never come out and said, PPP, you're wrong. Mr. President, you're wrong. They don't do that. And they're primarily motivated by their own business interests. And you notice in that statement, they're talking about their business too. So they want elections to come and be over with so they could get back to normal and to the business of making money. So we don't really, we've engaged the private sector on a number of occasions. And we point out to them the intromissions of the government, clear breaches of the Constitution, and we haven't seen anything coming of a strong nature from the private sector to, in a manner like the British High Commission and other NGOs, to say to this government, look, you know, what you're doing is wrong, and we think that you should talk to the opposition and try and resolve this matter. We don't hear things like that from them. I'm surprised now that they're saying that we should get together and hurry up and hold these elections.
Ms. Williams, going back to Mr. Samad's statement, you said the statements are not new, you heard them before. Can you say where exactly you were heard before?
But even just months before the Congress, or weeks before the Congress, we heard a statement coming out from AFC that were they to coalesce with us, they would be dead meat. That wasn't a statement made just a matter of weeks before the Congress.
That was
yes,
by Cameron said that.
That's from the leader himself. So the point I'm making to you,
and he himself made about turn to Congress.
You know, those things are not unusual. From 2006, and so in the JOPP, for example, which was a precursor to the APNU, the AFC was in that, but they pulled out at the last minute, and so for the first time in nearly a decade, I'm hearing, I heard a statement from Mr. Ramjitan that they were prepared to work with these bodies, including APNU. That's the first statement I heard in about 10 years from the AFC. But Samad's statement would have fallen into that category for the past 10 years, but for the Congress.
Thank you, sir.
May I address the private sector?
Sure.
Yeah. On the issue of the Private Sector Commission, as I understood it, this was a statement by a member. I don't know if Mr. Weeks, you could say whether this is a statement from the commission itself or from a member of the commission who gave a view. The president himself. Who was that? Who is the president?
Chairman of the Trade and Investment.
Oh, that's not the chairman of the Private Sector Commission, though. He's not the chairman of the Private Sector Commission. So there's a distinguishing. As I understand it, I think if we look at certain sentiments coming out of members of the private sector, I I can attest to the fact that they said they needed local government elections. That came from the private sector commission itself. I think other messages have called for elections from the private sector commission itself. So if Mr. Duku is of the opinion that he does not want any elections, I think that is Mr. Duku's view. But I think certain members of the private sector commission are very, very guarded of our democracy and would like to see elections, both local and national. That's from the private sector commission itself.
But he was speaking at the private sector commission event. That's right. And the private sector commission has not distanced itself from anything he would have said at that event.
Again, you would understand that I can't defend Mr. Duku or he defends the private sector commission. I'm saying, in the past, the private sector commission has come out and said we need local government elections. That is a stance they would have taken. This, if I get up and make a rogue statement contrary to the views of the chairman, could we now say this is a statement from the chairman himself or the chairman of the party to which I belong? No.
No, but if I don't, challenge you, if you say it here and I don't challenge you, it means I endorse it.
Well, whether implicitly or otherwise, or tacitly, I don't think it could be attributed to the chairman of the commission, the private sector commission, because I know, and this entire room knows, that they have said they needed local government elections. So if I'm going to judge them, I'm going to say, well, you said you wanted local government elections. Is there a waiver now for national elections? You said you wanted elections now. I won't take Mr. Duku's word and hold it against anybody but Mr. Duku. I think that's the point I'm trying to make.
Final question from you, Robin.
Apnu would have maintained no talks outside Parliament, but you would have also agreed to the idea of shared governance, as Mr. Granger would have said some time back. If the President or the PPP is to propose an idea of shared governance, how do you think such talks can be facilitated, taking into consideration that you've said no talks outside Parliament?
No, well, I think we're very clear about that. You have virtually shut down the House of Talk. So you shut down the House of Talk and then tell us, let's talk? That's one. This question of shared governance is not a new idea. It's been there before. We put it to the government before. And the government response, certainly at the time of President Barachagdio, was, we have to build trust, if you recall that. Well, they haven't come to us since then. They have never asserted this idea of shared governance. And so one would have to infer that they don't consider that trust has been built up. But all of you in the media would know that the government has never advanced anything like shared governance in this country. It's always the opposition. And we maintain, even now, that President Jagdio had a way out, President Ramata had a way out. If he wants to salvage, if he had wanted to salvage the rest of the term, it could have been done by having a government of national unity. You end the prorogation of Parliament, set up a government of national unity, and let's see how it works to the end of 2016. At least you will have an idea. But this whole tendency to having a one-party dictatorship rule and when it takes all, it's still permeating in the minds of the government. But they're not looking for options. They're not looking for options. So this question about shared governance, I don't even think there's any part in the recesses of the mind.